Hi everyone, welcome to Alternavita. This week I have a post for you that you might find surprising about wheat germ and celiac disease. And I did not purchase the full paper. Usually I can find the full paper, but this time I couldn't. But it's also going to tie into another video about how removing fats from whole milk, whole fat mammal milk, is a key factor in causing insulin resistance. So basically, this is the history of food processing, for lack of a better demonstration. So I'm just going to read to you a little bit about this and then go on to give you some key points from the whole fat mammal milk article and the nutritional deficiency of an essential fatty acid that is crucial. So celiac disease is an allergic intestinal disorder mainly triggered by gliadin, a component of gluten, and it is common in the population. Alpha-gliadin peptide causes harm by significantly raising levels of reactive oxygen species in cells. This study investigated the protective effects of 25 wheat germ peptides, which a peptide is smaller. So they investigated the protective effects of 25 wheat germ peptides, meaning post-digestion, on CACO2 cells treated with the a-gliadin peptide. And this was just an assay, I'll remind you. The results showed that 3 peptides notably improved cell viability and reduced the damage caused by the gliadin. Reactive oxygen species assays indicated that these 3 wheat germ peptides significantly lowered ROS levels, which had been elevated by the peptide which had been elevated by the gliadin peptide back to normal. Additionally, these WGPs markedly increased levels of antioxidant-related enzymes, catalase, glutathione reductase, and glutathione peroxidase. And the ratio of glutathione to oxidized glutathione, thereby enhancing the cell's antioxidant capacity. By examining key proteins in a specific pathway, it was found that wheat germ peptides could activate this pathway and upregulate a catalytic subunit and lead to downregulation of a glutamate cysteine modifier, while the wheat germ peptide 11 significantly upregulated it. This study suggests that wheat germ peptides can effectively reduce the cellular damage caused by the a-gliadin peptide, offering a new approach for preventing and treating celiac disease. So that last sentence is key because in the grammar, those kinds of words would not be used, such as prevent and treat, unless they mean what they say, because for the most part, they still do have to adhere to Latin, and Latin is a very precise language, and if they didn't mean prevent and treat, they would not use that kind of language. So even though this is just an assay, the overall message here is that you are looking at the history of food processing, what happens when you remove things, and then the downstream events are horrific, as we well know. So I did just include the abstract link here for you. And secondly, I included an article about contemporary wheat germ food processing. So what you are seeing is food refortification 2.0, where in the early part of the last century, all of these efforts were mostly unsuccessful, especially when the fundamental factor of not breastfeeding came into the picture and was basically ignored as a fundamental. And that shapes your whole microbiome and therefore your optimal ability to digest all foods you eat thereafter your birth. So the attempt to fortify, just say, well, we can just strip food of everything and then put it back in, then everything will be okay. Well, that's pretty much been an epic failure. So now the attempt is re-fortify 2.0, and I'm not convinced entirely that that's going to be any more successful than the whole food itself. Although there is evidence that, okay, if you eat wheat germ, when you combine it with probiotics, it works better. So you can go up the scale when you try to recreate an optimal digestive system. But whether it's as good as the whole food remains to be seen. So most people are probably familiar about the key foods, where everything has been stripped and now they are pretty much a worthless processed food, and wheat is one of those. It's been stripped of everything, all nutritional value. And actually, I did read that it's actually illegal to sell unless it is refortified with B vitamins and whatnot. So wheat germ is a perfect example of food processing. Most people are probably more familiar with salt, rice, sugar, and then wheat. So these are all diet staples, and milk. These are all diet staples when they were significantly changed by processing, leading to major problems in nutritional deficiencies. And then the efforts to refortify cereals would be another one. The efforts to refortify only have limited success. So that's where we are with wheat germ. So the second video is something that just popped into my feed, and I watched it, and it's about the history of milk and how removing the fat from milk led to a significant essential fatty acid deficiency that is crucial for glucose and insulin and metabolism. So I'm going to include that one too. But what I most would like to say is that I don't know how successful this is going to be, and every great cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket. And that's pretty much what I saw with this essential fatty acid, which is a high price supplement. And, you know, I've mentioned this many times, how the most profitable components of foods are stripped to become commodities. Who's behind these types of practices? And one of the most recent ones is acid whey in yogurt. And then they leave behind the hard to digest casein, which I call pig food. All the while claiming these changes are based on consumer demand. And then they're pushed with clever marketing and monopoly tactics. And you don't know any better by the time you get into the yogurt aisle, and all you see is Greek yogurt. Not that casein isn't beneficial, it truly is, but only when it's digested normally. And that would not be in the first part of the digestive process, because it just wouldn't, that's backwards. Okay. You would digest the easiest to digest components of milk and yogurt, and that would not be the casein. So these naturally present metabolites then make their way to the pharmaceutical industry, where they are reproduced as high-priced drugs. And then more often than not, what happens is they sometimes are beneficial, like lactose is a drug, it's beneficial. But usually now they're a foreign substance and they have no effect at the cellular level. In addition, they're usually injected, which leads to a substantially higher risk of malignancy. So this is just another diet staple, milk, and it's showing how that removing the most beneficial components, as with wheat germ, they remove the germ, they remove the bran, and they remove the fats. And then that leads to celiac and non-alcoholic fatty liver. So they've stripped the flour, and they've also destroyed the wheat. They've destroyed the wheat so much that it actually cannot grow without fertilizers and pesticides and things like that. And then they re-fortify it with low-quality synthetic B vitamins. The lowest grade cereals get shipped to poor countries and may contain higher levels of ergot, mold, and other fungal toxins. So this is how the for-profit food processing industry works. And this video and this paper shows that the effects have really been devastating. And I would like to point out that much of this was known in the 1800s. It didn't take until 2024 to figure this out, is what I'm saying. So in the history of especially America, who embraced processed food, They embraced salt, more than salt. And then they had to put the iodine back in when everyone got goiter. They embraced flour. And then they started getting berry and all kinds of nutritional deficiencies. They embraced sugar, certainly, and then rice, more that was an Asian thing, where they polished rice. Also caused berry. And then what was the other one? Milk. So milk was a lot better off when they were fortifying it with cod liver oil. But then they gave up on that and they began irradiating it. And then they tried fortifying it with very high amounts of vitamin D. And now they are back to the naturally occurring amounts of vitamin D. So those are just the staples that I can think of that most people are aware of. Salt, sugar, flour, rice, and wheat. And how food processing literally, even when it was minimal, it literally destroyed these foods. And the problems got worse the more processed the food became. So the takeaway from this video is, when you're looking at Sardinia, which they do, and they look at dolphins, which they do, I'm not objecting to their study methods. She's right. The dolphins are a pure subject, whereas the Sardinians, all kinds of factors can come into play. But they are in those groups of people who have lived very long, healthy lives, including the men. And the number one thing you should probably take home is that their diet is still mostly local. And all of these things they learned from the monks, because prior to cheese making, wine making, food preservation, which is completely different than food processing, everyone lived a subsistence lifestyle. There was no such thing as, there was little of food storage and preparation, food storage and preservation, not preparation. So there's nothing wrong with that. People began to be healthier and live longer when they weren't living a subsistence lifestyle, and just, hunting and gathering. Because then what would happen was, winter would approach, you'd be malnourished, you'd get sick, or you'd starve to death. So that's no way to live. So with the advent of food preservation methods, people began to get healthier, get more nutrition, because if you watch this for any amount of time, you know that adding some specific microbes to food actually increases the vitamin content. So they got healthier, and they didn't get sick as often. But they still relied on they still had pretty much a local diet. And that's what we should return to. Because the majority of this is coming from the desire to have worldwide markets. And that's just not possible. And I don't think it's going to be possible, even when they reduce these nutritional benefits to a pure level that isn't affected by degradation. I don't think it's going to be possible, personally. And we should return to local eating, and there would be no reason why you could not get a healthy cookie or a healthy cake at the local level, and it has to be delivered in one day, and it has to be consumed within a week. There's no reason why people can't return to that. Number one, you would eliminate the need for plastic and a lot of other packaging. You still might rely on glass, but you would definitely eliminate the need for a lot of plastic and styrofoam and things like that. And you could rely more on paper. And that's pretty much how people used to live before the days of cookie cutter Walmart, and that's how they used to live. They went to the butcher, they went to the baker, and then they went to the candlestick maker. That's just the way it was. And it was all local. And that's when we had the greatest increases in longevity and good health. And until a certain point in time, when not breastfeeding entered the picture, all of those markers, the only markers that were really still increasing were cancer and diabetes. But when we improve sanitation, and people still, for the most part, did not embrace processed foods, which that was kind of probably in between the 1920s and 1960s. We had huge strides in health and longevity, except for cancer and diabetes. And some processed foods, and the majority of the staples of processed foods have been around for a lot longer than the cookies and the soda and all that other stuff that's processed, the soups and all that kind of stuff. The staples were processed for longevity long before the greatest majority of processed foods, which are pretty worthless. So that's your take-home message. You should try to get the whole foods. You should stay away from processed food as much as possible. You should realize they do recognize safe levels of things like sugar that you can safely metabolically process without causing problems. And you should change your mentality so that you can affect the market. There's nothing really else to say. You still do have a certain amount of freedom to influence the market, and that's what you should do. And probably be aware that they are still stripping foods, and then they are still trying to resell them at a higher margin to higher price markets. And the people in the video about the nutritional deficiency C15 are pretty much no different. So it's a racket. And you can probably determine a more natural way to boost your C15. And then there was one more thing I wanted to say about a racket. Oh, the other thing about the racket is, I bet since they own the patent on this, and it could be the military that owns the patent, or these two individual people and their company, I don't know. But a lot of times, if they do plan on using this to re-fortify food and still keep the shelf life, I'm guessing somewhere along the line there's going to be a royalty involved. So it's just a racket, and I saw that almost immediately, and I also saw it with the wheat germ peptides, a supplement that is $150 to $199, when you could pretty much get both. You could pretty much get all of it if you can find the least processed flour and make your own bread. And then the next best alternative is the oil or the wheat germ itself, and just add that to your diet. But there's always a best and worst in this scenario, and you should train yourself to see what's going on so that you can just take their knowledge and improve your own health as much as you possibly can. And that's always been my approach, and it continues to be my approach. So personally, I do notice my skin is getting softer from my wheat germ oil. I also bit the bullet and bought more salmon oil because I had been out for 2 or 3 months and didn't replace that yet. So I've added my oils back in and added the wheat germ. In addition, those were something I always did. The salmon oil, because it's loaded with B vitamins, and I just think out of the fish oils, it's one of the best. But fish oil is fine. Cod liver oil is fine. In the winter, I switched to cod liver oil. And I will continue with the wheat germ oil as well. And that just is a personal choice over the wheat germ, although we do have wheat germ in our refrigerator right now because those muffins, that muffin recipe on my page is delicious. So, okay, everyone, that's it for this week. I hope you find that helpful, and all of your celiac friends, which I do have a few celiac friends, you might want to clue them into this. And I wish I could have read the entire article because I would like to know what they said about the genetic component. They seem to be, in the abstract, they seem to have dismissed that pretty much out of hand, but I would have to read the entire paper to determine that. And as I said, I just couldn't find it. In this particular case, usually I can find the free version somewhere, but I just couldn't find it. So, okay, I hope you find that helpful, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you for your time. Bye. let me come back and clarify a few things that I forgot to say when you're trying to compare an American diet with any other diet in the world. And then think if I just replicate this, I'll be like that. And that's probably not going to be the case. But what you can't say is, because I'm not like them, we didn't have the same benefits as a Sardinian. America is different because when they came over here, they were pretty much on a subsistence living. There was not the abundance that there was in Europe at the time, or other countries, Spain, whatever. And so in the beginning, it was partly they were living a subsistence living, but then when they began to embrace processed foods, it was partly due to subsistence. America is a big country. When people began to expand, they had to have food that lasted a long time, and then later on it was due to affluence. So you really can't compare apples and oranges like some people try to do. You just can't compare it. But the other thing is, when it comes to this re-fortify attempt 2.0, this is like it's the same cause, but we're hoping for a different effect. And that's just kind of ridiculous. It really is, but that's just the way it is here and around much of the world. We know the cause, but let's just try this and this and this and hope for a different effect. And that's just ridiculous, because the cause always leads to the effect. And you should not reject the cause. It's that simple. So that's re-fortify 2.0. I probably won't live to see the effect, but just educated guess. It might be better, but it's not going to be ideal, because they reject the cause, and they reject the causes, and they hope for a different effect. And that's just not how it works. So, okay, everyone. That was my key talking point, and I forgot it. So, okay, have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.